A very good morning. 1st of November, we are back again with another edition of Breakfast News. Just less than 60 days to go for the new year to come in. I am Anil Thomas and with me my co-anchor for the morning, Preeti Balla. Good morning, Preeti.
Good morning, Anil. Yes, a warm morning to you too. A beginning of the new month and a beginning of the new week. We get everything that's making it to the headline to make sure that your morning starts on the right note. We'll get you national updates, international updates, also updates from the world of business and sports, also web news to be enough to keep you engaged for the next 1 hour. First, we get to the top stories.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaches Glasgow to attend the COP26 summit, says he looks forward to work with other world leaders on mitigating climate change and articulating India's efforts in this regard. Climate finance, carbon markets to top India's agenda at COP26.
G20 Rome Declaration reaffirms extensive COVID immunization as global public good, commits to refrain from WTO's inconsistent export restrictions and to increase transparency and predictability in delivery of vaccines, committed to the Paris Agreement goal to hold the global average temperature increase.
India pushes and obtains commitment from G20 for improving of livelihoods for small and marginal farmers. Efforts to be made to help optimize the process and procedures of WTO for vaccine approval and emergency use authorization.
All schools to reopen in the states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu to allow functioning of 1st to 8th standard classes on rotational basis. Delhi schools to be reopened with 50% capacity from today.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's coalition keeps a comfortable majority in Sunday's parliamentary election despite losing some seats as his week-old government grapples with a coronavirus-battered economy and regional security challenges.
All right, those are the top stories. Let's get to the news in detail. We begin with COP26 summit, which kicks off in Glasgow.
COP26, well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Glasgow, the port city of Scotland in the United Kingdom, to attend COP26 summit. Climate finance, carbon markets are among India's top agenda at COP26. Over 30,000 delegates and leaders from more than 100 countries are participating in the climate summit to discuss on climate action and mitigation of global warming. On reaching Glasgow, Prime Minister Modi tweeted and said, landed in Glasgow, will be joining the COP26 summit, where he looks forward to working with other world leaders on mitigating climate change and articulating India's efforts in this regard. Apart from COP26, Prime Minister Modi will also be holding bilateral talks with the United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Glasgow, Scotland to attend the COP26 summit, he received warm reception from the Indian community there. The Indian diaspora expressed happiness after meeting Prime Minister, calling him a jewel of motherland India. Take a look at this report.
has arrived in Glasgow and was met with a rousing reception by the Indian diaspora. I've got with me some of these people who have been singing and are here to see Prime Minister. Sir, आप लोगों का कैसा लग रहा है? How do you feel to be meeting the Prime Minister himself?
Sir, it has been proud moment for all of us. We are representing Glasgow Indians and we are serving the whole community of all Indians.
IT is coming in Glasgow and we do a lot of community work and we are happy and proud and Modi ji is in Glasgow.
हमारा नारा है भारत के बाहर भारत का निर्माण. ये हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि भारतीय जो भी इंडिया के बाहर हैं, we can try to help him settling in Glasgow.
हमने गाना बनाया हुआ है, हम गाना सुनाना चाहेंगे.
ये देश है वीर जवानों का, बलदेवों का, मस्तानों का, इस देश का यारो है, इस देश का यारो क्या कहना, मोदी है भारत का देना. What about you? You've been waiting here.
Yeah, I've been waiting here for almost 4 hours, and it's been really exciting to see Narendra Modi from like 2 feet. So it's been really exciting.
What about you, sir?
No, it's a very good moment, I will say, because we're waiting for a long time, but this is really amazing moment for me, and we are so excited, you know.
It's been a proud moment for whole Glasgow and whole Scotland, in fact.
We have one more thing.
It is definitely a proud moment for all these people who have been waiting for a long time to get a glimpse of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and that has happened. Modi! This is Tapesh Bhattacharya from Glasgow.
All right, our correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya is joining us, and he's covering Prime Minister's visit in Glasgow. Tapas, good morning. Now the COP26 kicks off in Glasgow. I'll put into the perspective the latest report by the World Meteorological Organization, which has talked of how the world is facing new challenges, is facing the new normal when we talk of the climate challenges. In context of that, how relevant is the COP26 that is being, organized in Glasgow?
It is very important. It is, in fact, if I may say, it is a make or break event for the world, especially for both the developed and developing countries. The developed countries over the years have said that they will commit to climate finance, transfer of technology, and such measures in order to curb the menace of climate change, the pollution, all the major aspect that the world has been facing. The developing countries, on the other hand, spoke about how for many years all the promises that have been made in all the climate summit have not yet been fully met. And that is where I believe that this particular climate COP26 is so important, because both the developed and developing countries realizes the need to come together. They have to meet midway, and somewhere down the line, COP26, the developed countries now have actually pledged $100 billion US, but even now it seems that this particular amount will not be enough, because the last time it was pledged was 2009, and it's 2021. So the situation, the ground reality has changed a lot, and it is time to revisit the financial aspect of climate change, and in order to have a major say. So COP26 has a potential to change the world. COP26 also has a potential to see both the developed and developing countries coming midway to find a solution of climate change. Remember, the UN and other agencies have been talking about keeping the emission level, keeping the temperature at 1.5 degree pre-industrial era. So that becomes a even more daunting task, considering that since the Paris Agreement, not much of forward movement has taken place. So both the South as well as the North, the developed and the developing countries need to come together in order to make a major headway in this particular COP26.
Tapas, purely looking at G20 that precedes the COP26. G20 generally leads the way to what to expect at COP26. But when one takes a look at that G20 declaration that's taken place, in terms of declaration, it looks fabulous. But in terms of commitments there by the developed countries, still lot to be left on the table, or still, goalposts being shifted?
Goalpost has been shifted truly because since now in COP26 the buzz is that of net zero. It is a good thing that you're talking about net zero emission by 2050. But before that there was Paris Climate Agreement. Before that there were other COPs that took place, and at every COP, the buzz was that we will do this in so many years. We will do this in so many years. Now, if you take a close look at the ground situation, UN report states that most of the countries in G20, have failed to meet their commitments. India is probably the only country, one of the very few countries, in fact, in G20, which has kept its NDC commitments, which it has already put forth in Paris Agreement. Remember, India's NDC targets are very much in line. In fact, they will be able to be met much before than their prescribed time limits, and that comes under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, where he stated India's position that it is high time we take the route of renewable energy. In fact, by 2030, India has pledged to shift to 450 gigawatts of the renewable energy. So this becomes even more important in this particular time, where even though they are talking about net zero emission by 2050, the developed countries actually need to get into the negative net zero rather than pushing for for developing countries to agree to that. And that is where the challenge will lie. And also there is another point that has been quite kind of missing. The other point is, they say that the developed countries say that by 2030 they will they will have net zero. What about till then? So till then, 2030, will they continue to emit the way they have been doing? Because the emission, if a close look at UN report, it says that most of the polluters, in fact, the emission per capita in individual is quite high still in the United States, along with the other G20 countries and European Union. So hard look and revisiting of the norms and other such aspect is quite required in this particular COP26.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you, and appreciate your joining us this morning, giving us an insight especially into what to expect at the COP26 summit that gets underway there in the Scottish town of Glasgow.
All right, let's get you more on this COP26 summit that kicks off in Glasgow. The summit aims to implement the Paris Agreement and also ensuring all nations achieve their net zero emission goals. That is critical. 120 heads of different governments and heads of state are attending this conference. We get you more details in this report ahead.
Glasgow is hosting the much anticipated COP26 summit that kicked off on the 31st of October. This summit is witnessing more than 30,000 delegates and leaders from more than 100 countries gathered to deliberate on climate action and mitigation of global warming. Implementing the Paris Agreement and ensuring all nations achieve their net zero emission goals is critical. There are two major points that have been put forth by India, which is leading the least developing and the developing countries stand.
First is the finance, and second is the technology transfer also, because if you want that world will work on it on the same level playing field, so it is must required that they will provide climate finance as well as the technology transfer to the developing countries, and that is the main issue in discussion will be discussed in the negotiation also. India has already adopted a policy which is environment friendly and which will be give a contribution for the targets achieved by the world, given by the all over world in last time also.
Ensuring just, equitable and prompt climate finance tops India's agenda.
Without this climate finance, it is very difficult for developing countries to attain their development goal and the green development at the same time. So we feel that climate finance is the crux for the negotiation in this particular COP. If climate finance is made available in adequate quantity, it is assured, it is additional, and there is a fair distribution and collection formula for it, so that we are assured that whatever is being promised that will be available, we can plan our green development accordingly.
Both these points have been put forth by India along with like-minded countries who wants the developed countries to walk the talk in this particular climate summit.
First thing is that $100 billion promised was done in 2009. It is not fulfilled till today. Second thing is, you are very much right, it is not enough in the today's circumstances. If we compare between 2009 and 2021, the world is going ahead, so it is not sufficient. As for the India's stand is concerned, we are very much, so many times we say that we will be the part of solution. India is ready to solve all the issues.
Solution to climate change is not just setting net zero carbon emission targets as proposed by developed countries, but rather these countries need to acknowledge their historic responsibility for emissions and protect the interest of developing nations and those vulnerable to climate change.
Our stand is that if we want to achieve net zero by 2050, then globally it should be net zero. That means not every country need to be net zero by 2050. Developed countries who have used carbon space quite a lot compared to their own need and their eligibility, they need to vacate that carbon space and leave it to the developing countries, including India. So we will be net zero, of course, but later after 2050, not in 2050. When 2050, developed countries have to be negative and we will remain positive to be a global net zero.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pressing for a shift in the discourse on climate change. Climate action, climate justice and climate finance must go hand in hand. With camera person Praveen Johar, this is Tapush Bhattacharya for DD India, Glasgow.
Well, Union Minister Bhupendra Yadav outlined India's key concerns at the COP negotiations. The Union Minister in an exclusive said the country has exceeded its NDC targets and under Prime Minister Modi's leadership has pushed for renewable energy. Let's listen in.
Joining me is Union Minister Bhupendra Yadav to talk about India's stand on COP26. Sir, welcome to Doordarshan. Tell us about India's stand. It seems the West, the developed countries have already stated that they are going to provide $100 billion, but it seems it may not be enough now considering the fact that it was supposed to be done quite early.
First thing is that $100 billion promised was done in 2009. It is not fulfilled till today. Second thing is, you are very much right, it is not enough in the today's circumstances. If we compare between 2009 and 2021, the world is going ahead, so it is not sufficient. As for the India's stand is concerned, we are very much, so many times we say that we will be the part of solution. India is ready to solve all the issues. India has already adopted a policy which is environment friendly and which will be give a contribution for the targets achieved by the world, given by the all over world in last time also.
It is important that India cuts its emission, the developing countries cuts their emission, but when it comes to providing the technology transfer, that is not happening in the way it should have happened. What is your take on that?
First is the finance and second is the technology transfer also, because if you want that world will work on it on the same level playing field, so it is must require that they will provide climate finance as well as the technology transfer to the developing countries, and that is the main issue in discussion will be discussed in the negotiation also.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been quite vocal. In fact, from the time he started, 2014 onwards, we have seen India has been working constantly on the environment front. The International Solar Alliance and other events are testimony of that. And once he comes here, do you believe that that will again give impetus to this COP26 movements?
Yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision is very important. Not about the only vision. The what steps taken by the India in his leadership for last 7 years is very good steps taken by our country. Apart from NDC, he fixed his 450 gigawatt ambitious target that shows his commitment toward this thing. And I think the word climate justice included in the Paris Agreement also, that is a main thought of our Prime Minister.
Appreciate your time. So that was Union Minister Bhupendra Yadav telling us that India's stand is quite clear, and two very contentious issues where India has been talking about it, and at the COP26 they will be putting forth their views. With camera person Praveen John, this is Tapush Bhattacharya for TD India, Glasgow.
India, along with Australia, United Kingdom and small island developing states, that is SIDS, will be launching a new initiative for infrastructure for resilient island states on the sidelines of the upcoming Conference of Parties, that is COP26. Australia, India and the United Kingdom have committed an initial funding of $10 million. Our correspondent Tapush Bhattacharya spoke to Gayatri Isar Kumar, High Commissioner of India to the United Kingdom, regarding Prime Minister Modi's visit to Glasgow.
Is Gayatri Isar Kumar, High Commissioner of India to UK. First and foremost, we'd like to ask you about the COP26 agenda. It's a huge event. Climate change is something that everybody is talking about, and COP26 is happening in Glasgow. What is going to be the major agenda here?
Well, of course, climate change and climate action with greater urgency. For India, it will be an occasion to launch two major initiatives under the International Solar Alliance and under the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And of course, the fact that this meeting is happening straight after G20 in Rome makes it an occasion for the world to see how we can address the priority of economic revival alongside sustainable development through very good and urgent action on mitigating the impact of climate change.
Ma'am, Prime Minister is coming here. What kind of program can we expect in Glasgow? Indian community members are very keen to meet Prime Minister in person.
I think that is the only part where it will not be to the full expectation of the Indian community due to COVID restrictions, of course, and due to access restrictions, because this wonderful city is being prepared for so many delegations coming from around the world. Some of the members of the Indian community are coming to the hotel in the permissible number, and they will have the opportunity to see and to greet the Honorable Prime Minister. And of course, I'm looking forward to other occasions when we shall have the Prime Minister here on a full-fledged visit, and the entire Indian community, of course, will be watching now to hear the Honorable Prime Minister while he participates in COP26, and will be looking to the social media for his messages. So they will be participating in that way and welcoming the Honorable Prime Minister of India while he is here in the UK.
Ma'am, UK is having a bilateral with PM Modi. Boris Johnson will be meeting. What can we expect from that bilateral? I believe the work that is going on along with UK and Australia about managing the IRIS program, if I'm not wrong. So what is the latest from that?
That, of course, will be a very special initiative that will be launched under the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure Initiative. That is India and UK and Australia. And it will be a way of helping small islands and also developing states to cope with, to prepare for, to preempt a disastrous impact of natural calamities, and to make sure that we have green infrastructure, and to make sure that we have climate resilient infrastructure. An amount of $10 billion has been committed, and we hope that there will be lots of partners in that very soon. The bilateral agenda is going to be a review of the implementation and of the roadmap 2030, on which a lot of progress has been made already since our two prime ministers met in May 2021, particularly in trade, in finance, in regional and global priorities such as vaccine, mutual recognition of certifications, of course climate action, and they will also discuss defense and security issues which are of common concern.
Appreciate your transfer. That was the High Commissioner of India in UK. With Camperson Praveen Jha, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for TD India, Glasgow.
Well, representing the voice of youth, Disha Sarkar is all set for the much-awaited UN Climate Summit or the COP26 at Glasgow. Her main focus will be to advocate on climate change. Disha is acting as the leading action for change empowerment negotiator. Disha has been engaged with the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat and its youth constituency as an active and contributing member. Our correspondent Tapash brings you more on this.
The youth are making their presence felt in COP26, and I have got with me some of them, especially from India. I've got with me Disha Sarkar, and also from Argentina, I've got with me Liz. And these are some of these young people, the young generation who are making their voices here at this COP26, because it is important that all the world leaders listen to their viewpoints, because COP26 deals with climate change and this impacts them a lot. Disha, what are you going to speak in COP26? You are going to represent the country.
Firstly, we the youth from the developing countries, especially India being a leader in the developing countries list, I believe that it's very important that we take climate action very seriously, and we give out this message that climate action now, we want robust actions in case of climate action. And plus I emphasize on climate education, climate training, public awareness, public participation and international cooperation. And me being from the youth constituency of the UNFCCC, I believe that youth voices need to be heard. Nothing about us without us.
Climate education and at the same time international cooperation. I've got with me Liz from Argentina. Liz, it is important that every country comes together and make it happen. What is your take on it?
Hello India. So we come from Argentina and we are here on behalf of the civil society, and it's really important that both developed and developing countries come together to achieve their nationally determined contributions that they need to have submitted in 2020. Also, developed countries need to transfer the $100 billion that they committed to transfer to developing countries to be able to reduce their emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change.
What about you? You came all the way also from Argentina. What are you looking forward to in this particular climate change summit?
In my case, hello. I'm from Argentina too, and for me it's very important to all the voices are together and fighting for the climate action, because all the reality are so different, and all the people need to fight in this way and with necessities they have.
Appreciate. So these are the young voices, these are young people coming all the way around the globe in COP26. One voice, they are saying climate change is here, it is real, and everybody must come together in this fight. With Camperson Praveen Jha, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for TD India, Glasgow.
The newly elected president of COP26, Alok Sharma, called upon delegates to deliver on the promises made at the COP in Paris in 2015, at which the governments committed themselves to keep average global temperature rises well below 2 degrees Celsius. He was speaking in Glasgow.
The IPCC report in August was a wake-up call for all of us. It made clear that the lights are flashing red on the climate dashboard. That report, agreed by 195 governments, makes clear that human activity is unequivocally the cause of global warming.
Well, now updates from G20.
At the end of the G20 summit, the leaders adopted G20 Rome Leaders Declaration. Now, the leaders said that as the premier forum for international economic cooperation, they are committed to overcoming the global health and economic crisis stemming from the pandemic. They also agreed upon a shared vision to combat climate change and have taken important steps towards the achievement of gender equality. Also, according to the G20 Rome Leaders Declaration, vaccines are among the most important tools against the pandemic, and they reaffirmed that the extensive COVID immunization is a global public good. They also vouched that we will advance our efforts to ensure timely, equitable and universal access to safe, affordable, quality and effective vaccines, therapeutics and also diagnostics to help advance towards the global goals of vaccinating at least 40% of the population in all countries by the end of this year and 70% by mid-2022, that is next year. We commit to refrain from WTO inconsistent export restrictions and to increase transparency and predictability in the delivery of vaccines. We will all work towards the recognition of the COVID-19 vaccines deemed safe and efficacious by the WHO and to strengthen the organization's ability regarding approval of vaccines, including optimizing procedures and processes with the aim of broadening the list of vaccines authorized for emergency use. We are committed to achieving food security and adequate nutrition for all. We remain committed to the Paris Agreement goal to hold the global average temperature increase well below 2 degrees and to pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. We recognize that the impacts of climate change at 1.5 degrees are much lower than at 2 degrees. Keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach will require meaningful and effective actions and commitment by all the countries. We will cooperate on deployment and dissemination of zero or low carbon emission and also renewable technologies. We also reaffirm our commitment to gender equality and emphasize on the pivotal role of empowerment of women and girls. We will endeavor to restart international travel in a safe and orderly manner. Also, to achieve common goals in the global fight against corruption, we adopt our 2022-24 Anti-Corruption Action Plan.
The 16th G20 summit at Rome saw several key decisions making their way into the Rome Declaration. Representing the voice of developing nations, India pushed through several of these historic decisions. Listen in to Union Minister and India Sherpa at G20 Piyush Goyal as he explains the big takeaways.
Under the health section, where we have agreed that COVID-19 immunization is a global public good and the recognition of COVID-19 vaccines, which are deemed to be safe and efficacious by the WHO, will be mutually accepted, subject of course to national law and privacy law that countries may have. But more importantly, it has been agreed that everybody will help to optimize the processes and procedures of the WTO for vaccine approval and emergency use authorization, and will also be strengthened. The WHO will be strengthened so that they can do recognition of vaccines faster. Travel needs to get reinvigorated. We need to get back people's movement, bring tourism back, bring economic activity back, and we have all agreed to work towards a common framework for accepting each other's vaccine certificates. We have also discussed gender-based violence and increasing women's participation in the workforce. Also denounced the uneven distribution of unpaid care and domestic work. Energy and climate was clearly the center stage of our discussions. India and many other developing countries pushed for safeguarding the interests of the developing world. We were also joined by the developed countries to increase the ambition from the current levels of commitment and active interest that the developed world has shown in terms of providing technology and affordable finance at low interest or grant-based finance, long tenor finance. We've really got into the text the language which confirms that the developed world has acknowledged that they have not done enough in terms of meeting their commitments, and that they will have to be more forthcoming in providing finance, in providing technologies and the enablers to make the transition to a clean energy world in the future. For the first time, the G20 has identified sustainable and responsible consumption and production, along with provision of finance and technology, as critical enablers for achieving the climate goals first decided at Paris, and as we have all agreed, we must aspire for even more ambition. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's mantra of sustainable lifestyles finds resonance in the Rome Declaration, and sustainable consumption and responsible production patterns coming out of the Sustainable Development Goal number 12, which is aimed at encouraging the developed countries to reduce their luxurious and energy-intensive lifestyle, has been discussed and accepted. We have also been able to push the commitment of the developed world to provide $100 billion every year through from now until 2025, and the commitment of all the countries to mobilize greater levels of capital for the less developed countries and the emerging economies. Mention of the CDRI in accelerating the agenda of sustainable urban planning has been brought into the declaration. We are delighted that what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had proposed in Brisbane in 2014 has finally been accepted by all the countries. First, the OECD discussed it. Now the G20 framework on base erosion and profit sharing has been brought out in this statement. It's truly a historic achievement for a more stable and fair international tax system. We have also agreed to extend the debt suspension service initiative so that vulnerable countries, low-income countries, are not burdened with debt repayment at this critical time. On agriculture, we are very delighted to share with you that livelihoods for small and marginal farmers were at the focus of our discussions, and everybody has agreed that improving their livelihood is an important global effort that we all have to put in.
Well, time now for us to head into a short breather here. On the other side, we'll take a look at schools reopening all over India. Stay tuned.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. as the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation. Do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask up, India.
Welcome back after the break. As India's vaccination coverage exceeded 106.14 crore, all schools are reopening in the states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Kerala is reopening schools from today following safety measures as per the guidelines by Department of Education and Department of Health. Arrangements are also made to monitor the schools on a daily basis to ensure that they function in a safe manner. Classes from 1st to 7th and classes from 10th to 12th are beginning from Monday, while the rest of the classes will start by 15th of November. The school's opening is occurring in context of more than 95% among the eligible population receiving at least one dose of the vaccine. Teachers and non-teachers present in the school premises must have completed 2 doses of the vaccination. Parents are being sensitized by teachers regarding the protocols that must be maintained by students at school. All possibilities for crowding have to be avoided, and hence assembly, sports and group dining must be avoided at schools as per the protocol.
Well, you're joined by Mohsin from Thiruvananthapuram on the phone line. Good morning, Mohsin. Looking at the way schools opening, but is there apprehension among the parents when it comes to sending their kids back to school?
Good morning. After a break of more than 1.5 years due to coronavirus outbreak, schools in Kerala are set to reopen today. The Education Department has arranged professional celebrations at schools.
Okay.
There is apprehension among many parents for sending their students due to COVID cases. However, the State Department has ensured that all COVID protocols are following for reopening. State Education Minister has said all arrangements are made to welcome students at school. The schools are reopening following the strict COVID protocol like biobubble system.
Okay. Thank you and appreciate your joining us this morning there, giving us an insight into schools reopening in Kerala. Shifting to the neighboring state of Tamil Nadu, where Tamil Nadu 2 schools are opening after studying online for the last 19 months. Younger students studying in class 1 to 8 will return to schools today. With this, all 1 crore students studying from class 1 to 12 in Tamil Nadu are being allowed to return to schools for the first time since March 2020. The Elementary Education Department has asked the schools to conduct storytelling, drawing and other creative sessions for the first 2 weeks to ease children back into the academic environment. Schools have devised their own ways to split students' strength into 2 and conduct physical classes on alternate days.
All right, Philip Matthews joining us from Chennai to get us more on that. Philip, let us know what is, the mood like, because while on one hand, the children would be in fact excited to go back to their schools after almost 19 months. At the same time, again, as we put this question to our correspondent from Kerala, also other apprehensions among the parents also in sending their kids back to schools. And also very quickly, the SOPs which have been put forth by the state administration when we talk of schools resuming regular classes for students as young as from the first standard onwards.
Well, that's right. In fact, there is an atmosphere of excitement and expectancy as students return to school. But there's also it's also mixed with feelings of apprehension also because of the because of the pandemic, the cloud of the pandemic that's still hanging over their heads. So the State Education Department has formulated protocols to ensure that there is no chance of an outbreak. Students and teachers have been asked to wear masks and observe physical distancing. Of course, apart from that, school staff have been and teachers have been fully vaccinated. So most schools are also organizing classes on alternate days so that students don't have to crowd into classrooms. So clearly a number of measures are being taken. As a first step, students are being allowed to gradually get back on their bearings. They've been for the first couple of weeks, most focus will be on non-academic activities, so that the students will gradually get used to the working environment. And then the state education department has also come up with a bridge course, so that students can gradually make up for the academic time that they've lost, and basically pick up on the subjects that they haven't been able to familiarize themselves with over the last 19 months.
Okay, thank you and appreciate you joining us, Philip, with those updates there from Tamil Nadu, and for Munir for giving us an update there from Thiruvananthapuram. But now heading up north to Delhi, where after a gap of 19 months, schools in the national capital Delhi reopened from today with 50% of student strength. With the decline in COVID-19 cases in Delhi, the government has finally allowed schools and colleges to organize offline classes. Schools in the national capital reopened for classes 9 to 12 from September 1st after a prolonged closure due to COVID-19 pandemic, with schools across Delhi preparing to welcome back children of all grades from today. These schools have been directed to ease parents and students into the return in a phased parent-teacher meeting till November 15th and to ensure 100% participation of parents in these. Students can only attend school after parents submit their consent, and collecting is a part of the agenda of these meetings. Meanwhile, the schools will have to make parents aware of all the rules and regulations which will be in place to ensure social distancing and to maintain 50% capacity in school. Need of the hour is explaining to the children to be careful, taking care of all COVID SOPs so that the children are safe and parents feel comfortable.
All right, from here we get you all international updates and across the globe. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's coalition kept a comfortable majority in Sunday's parliamentary election, despite losing some seats as his weak-souled government grappled with a COVID-battered economy and regional security challenges. Kishida's Liberal Democratic Party and its junior coalition partner Komito together won 293 seats, well above the majority of 233 in the 465-member lower house, the more powerful of Japan's two-chamber assembly, where they previously had 305 seats. The LDP lost 15 seats from its pre-election share, but the 261 seats it won are an absolute majority, a level that allows the party and its ruling bloc to control all parliamentary committees and also easily ram through legislation. Fumio Kishida dissolved the lower house only 10 days after after assuming office on October 4th.
Well, let's now get your updates on COVID-19 from across the globe. The virus continues to loom across the world, with the number of cases crossing 24 crore 74 lakh, 22 crore 41 lakh recoveries, 50 lakh 14,000 fatalities across the world. The United States continues to remain battered with the pandemic, both in terms of infections as well as fatalities. In terms of infections, over 4 crore 68 lakh. In terms of deaths, over 7 lakh 66,000 deaths being reported in the United States of America.
And Bangladesh will start the vaccination of children aged from 12 to 17 years from today onwards. It will initially be launched at 8 vaccination centers in Dhaka. The authorities have set up 25 booths at each center where they will administer the Pfizer shots to children. This Pfizer vaccine is extremely temperature-sensitive vaccine, so centers where it is administered must be air-conditioned. The 8 schools where the centers will be set up were selected with this restriction in mind. The Health Directorate aims to inoculate 4,000 to 5,000 children each year, and after the successful completion of this initial campaign, it will be expanded to 20 other districts. There are more than 10 million children aged 12 to 17 years in Bangladesh.
Well, it's 1st of November today. Every day, DD India brings you a special story on India's freedom struggle. In today's edition of Saga of Freedom, we will talk about 2 major incidents in the history of India the establishment of Hindustan Ghadar and British colonization of India. Weekly revolutionary publication Hindustan Ghadar was established on this day in the year 1913. The articles in Hindustan Ghadar were initially authored by famous revolutionary Hardayal. On the 1st of November 1858, India became a direct British colony after the commencement of the Government of India Act.
November 1913, the Ghadar party started the weekly revolutionary publication Hindustan Ghadar from the Yugantar Ashram in San Francisco, the United States of America. The purpose of the publication was to further the Indian independence movement with special focus on Indian sepoys of the British Indian Army. The weekly was first published in Urdu, followed by a Punjabi edition on 9th November.
Later, the paper was also published in Gujarati, Hindi, Pashto, Bengali, English, German, French and other languages. The issues were first handwritten before being printed using a small hand press. With the British government maintaining an iron grip on the press in India, the weekly emerged as an important publication to counter British propaganda.
The articles in Hindustan Ghadar were initially authored by famous revolutionary Hardayal, with the printing operation run by another freedom fighter, Kartar Singh Sarabha, then a student of the University of California at Berkeley.
Copies of the paper were shipped to India with returning Ghadarites and immigrants and were quickly deemed to be seditious and banned by the British Indian government. Careful measures were taken to shield the Ghadar supporters from the British intelligence, which included the measure of memorizing over 1,000 names of subscribers, so that no incriminating evidence could fall into the hands of the British government.
In March 1914, when the US government arrested Hardayal, he fled to Germany, leaving the operations to other members, including Ramchandra, Bhagwan Singh and Maulvi Barkatullah. They continued to spread information related to Indian independence and informed readers about the harshness of the British rule in India.
Other Indians also helped out with the press that printed not just the newspaper but also compilations of nationalist compositions and pamphlets including Ghadar Ki Goonj, Talwar and other publications which were also banned from British India.
On November 1st, 1858, India became a direct British colony after the commencement of the Government of India Act. The powers of the East India Company's Court of Directors were transferred to the Secretary of State for India, who was provided with an advisory body consisting of 15 members. A viceroy was appointed to serve as the representative of the British Crown, and Lord Canning became the first viceroy.
The Act ended the controversial doctrine of lapse, and the Indian civil services were constituted for the administration of the country, with a provision for Indians to be admitted to the service.
Today, on November 1st, 1954, the Union Territory of Puducherry was liberated from French colonialism.
After India became independent on August 15, 1947, India called for the unification of Pondicherry with the Union. India signed an agreement with France in June 1948, which gave power to the people to determine the political status of the territory.
However, in the municipal elections of Pondicherry, Karaikal and Yanam in October 1948, all municipalities except for one elected representatives of the French India Socialist Party, a pro-French group. The new councillors at a meeting accepted the autonomy offered by the French government.
However, in March 1954, members of the Executive Council, mayors of Pondicherry and 7 adjoining communes proclaimed their decision to merge with India without a referendum. All communes in Karaikal also followed suit, after which a referendum was conducted by the French administration in the border village of Kirur to ascertain the wish of the people.
On 18th October 1954, the municipal councillors and members of the assembly gave their verdict in favour of merger with India. The agreement for the de facto transfer of the 4 remaining French settlements to India was signed on October the 21st, 1954 and came into effect on November the 1st, 1954.
France and India entered into a treaty establishing the cession by the French Republic to the Indian Union of the French establishments of Pondicherry, Karaikal, Mahe and Yanam.
All right, that's it in this edition of the Breakfast News this morning.
Well, November 1st is an important day in our history. Let us celebrate this day for the rich diversity, language and culture of our land. Greetings and best wishes to all our viewers from Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, Punjab on their state formation day. That's not all. Heartfelt greetings for our viewers from the Union Territories of Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar, along with Puducherry, as they also celebrate their formation day.
Yes, indeed, an important day today. But also, before we end this edition, we are leaving you with glimpses of Mexican residents who returned to the streets for this year's Day of the Dead parade after the pandemic overshadowed it last year. Take a look. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.